We'll get started right away here. So now we're on the 11th comment here. So it's just a conversation. It's not a heated debate, but it is sort of a debate, but more of a conversation. It's dialogue. And so the Wahhabi says, who follows the Salafi da'wah today? This question here, after all of what we said, this is the 11th comment here. So after what preceded in the conversation, this question means this person he has tunnel vision. He can only see in very limited spectrum. He already asked us, if you remember, what are you saying? I don't follow the Salaf? And then we handled that. So this person here, he's stuck on Salafi da'wah. One track mind. So the Sunni responds, I have already answered this question for you. So this is what you have to do for a Wahhabi. You have to repeat your answer for him, because he's going to repeat his question to you. Then you answer him, then he's going to repeat his question for you again. What's the case of the Wahhabi? He's going to ask you a question, especially if you think it's a gotcha question. So he's going to ask you thinking he's got you. So then if you just answer him, give him a straightforward, easy answer. Don't give him something complicated. Don't tell him long paragraph, nothing like that. Just give him simple answer in one sentence. That's the right answer. That's going to stump him more than anything. So then when you tell him just simple, straightforward answer, which is truly the answer to his question, then there's a good chance in his mind you didn't even answer the question, although you really did though. So that's why. So what you're going to do, having this knowledge here, then that's why when he repeats his question for you, you're going to be ready for that. So then he repeats his question to you. Might be the same exact question, or he might reword the question. He didn't get out of you what he wanted, which is to be stumped. When you told him something that wasn't what he expected, then it was like you didn't tell him anything. It's like he just wants to try again to get what he expects. So the Sunni says, I have already answered this question for you. I'm repeating myself now. The majority of the nation, Ahlus Sunnah, follows the Salaf. But that does not mean that they must call themselves Salafis. Rather, using the name Salafi Dawah or Salafiyah or Salafiyun or Salafi Minhaj, etc., to describe following Ibn Taymiyyah, Ibn Abdul Wahhab, and Al-Albani, etc., is a new idea, which makes it an innovation. So for a Wahhabi, that's offensive to say that's an innovation, but it is an innovation. He's going to deny it. So like this one we're talking to now, he says, it is not new. You already agreed that we have to follow the Salaf. So he can't get his mind. He can't shift gears here. He's stuck. So the Sunni responds, please pay close attention to my words and do not only hear what you want to hear. I did not say that the Salaf is new. It's clear. This is what we started with. We defined Salaf for him. I said that calling oneself a Salafi or a Salafi Muslim is new. The Salaf didn't call themselves the Salafis. Even the 4th century, the generation directly after the first 3, which are the Salaf, the first 3 generations are the Salaf. The 4th generation, although they weren't following anyone but the Salaf, didn't call themselves the Salafis. Are you, coming more than 1,000 years later, more deserving of the name than them? Are you following the first 3 generations more closely than the 4th? If they weren't Salafis, then what makes you a Salafi? This is a strong argument here. Nor did the people of the 5th century call themselves Salafis, nor the 6th, nor the 7th, nor the 8th, nor the 9th, nor the 10th, nor the 11th, etc. So it is absolutely new. Thing is, you need to stand your ground with the person you're talking to. If you're too concerned about hurting his feelings, then you might not be able to deliver the truth to him as clearly as if you weren't concerned with hurting his feelings, which we talked about. Although you can have some amount of concern for his feelings, but not to the extent that it compromises your mission of clarifying the truth and defending the truth. So, what I'm saying is, sometimes you might have an answer that completely shuts down the person you're talking to. Like this guy says here, it's not new. So this answer completely shuts down what he's saying here. How is not new? Here you come 1,000 years later, more than 1,000 years later, talking about you're a Salafi and that's not new. And the people of the 4th century didn't call themselves Salafis. Or the 5th century, or the 6th century, or the 7th century, or the 8th century. When is going to become new then? When's going to be new? If we only started 10 years ago, that's what's new. 11 years ago or 20 years ago, that's old now. 50 years ago, 100 years ago, that's old. Even 100 years ago, for example. That's not old. So this answer shuts this guy down completely, really. We'll see what he says. But I say to you, don't avoid an answer that shuts down the one who's asking you or the one with whom you're having a dialogue because you want to spare his feelings. Because what does that mean if you do that? That means you're going to say something that's still open for discussion, still open to go back and forth with, still open to be criticized. Just tell him what's the exact truth. If that leaves him speechless, then let him be speechless. If that offends him, that's his problem. That's what I say. You're offended by the truth, that's your problem. What you're saying is not true. Maybe this trend started only about 50 years ago. If that. So it is new. It is an innovation, most definitely. I do not describe myself as a Salafi, just like the Muslims of old did not. But everything I believe and practice can be proven from the documents of the Salaf. And again, if you're going to make that claim, that means you need to have your proofs. You need to have studied the cases and you know your proofs. The cases about the attributes, about bid'ah innovations, about tawassul, or any other topic you want to address with this person. Or else you can make the claim and it could be true, except the part about, what is the statement? Everything I believe and practice can be proven from the documents of the Salaf. Okay, let's say that's a true statement. That doesn't mean you're the one who's able to prove it, though. So if you're not the one, if you want to say such a statement, but you're not the one who can prove that, then you might want to choose another phrase. Even though it's true that it can be proven, you won't be able to perform that feat, though. And then if this guy is more clever than you expected, he's going to shut you down. Or at least make you slip a couple times, enough times to make you seem discredited or discreditable. So for myself, I would be willing to say that to a Wahhabi. Everything I believe and practice, I can prove from the documents of the Salaf. And it was my encounter with the Wahhabi when I was still a new Muslim, and his shutting me down at the time and throwing me into confusion that made me swear to God another Wahhabi will never shut me down again. and I prayed to Allah and He helped me. So this Wahhabi, he doesn't want to submit here. Untrue. I have seen plenty of quotes of the scholars of old who say that they are Salafis. What's that? That's most likely is his imagination, if he's not lying. Wahhabis are liars, though. You definitely have to get that through your head. So if you think they're just misguided people who, if given the chance to say the truth, they would say the truth and retract the mistake, then you don't know what you're dealing with. If this guy isn't blatantly lying here, then this is his imagination most likely. He says, I have seen plenty of quotes of the scholars of old who say that they are Salafis. So the Sunni challenges him here, then produce them. Let's see. I challenge you, because Wahhabi, there's a good chance he doesn't expect you to challenge him. He expects you to take his word for granted or at face value. And one of the things that encourages him to assume this about you is his own confidence and maybe his rudeness towards you even. It's like he's a bully. So if you have a bully, if he intimidates you, you might not say to him, oh yeah, well, I'll push you back. You might try to talk him out of pushing you only, instead of letting him know you'll push him back. So the Sunni here, in this case, he challenged him, produced them. But maybe a lot of people don't do that. You got to call Wahhabi's bluff, because so many times you're going to find that he's lying somehow. Or he's inaccurate if he's not lying. So this Sunni, he says, no, what they said is that we must follow the Salaf, not that they are the Salafis. Those are two different things. So if he's not lying, he might have seen this, that they said, we are the Salaf, we must follow the Salaf. Or they might have quoted something and said, so says the pious Salaf, for example. So in his mind, that means he's saying, we're the Salafis. Or he knows that exactly how they said it, but he's a liar. And I recently had a conversation with the Wahhabi. He was saying Allah has two eyes. So I told him, you don't have an ayah for that. You don't have a hadith for that. Dual form, that is. For the dual form that you are explicitly pronouncing, you don't have any explicit pronunciation of that from the book. And you don't have any explicit pronunciation of that from the Sunnah. So he said, there is from the Sunnah. He said, because the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said that the Dajjal is our and Allah is not our. He said, and our saying he's not our, he's denying that Allah is our. He said, you can't deny that someone is our unless he had two eyes. That's what he said. And he repeated it many times. I didn't ask him for his reference at first. Rather, I waited. And before I asked him, because, Yani, instead of being afraid to challenge the Wahhabi to produce his reference, if you want, just pause, just be patient to see how often he's going to throw out his claim without a reference. How often will he throw out his claim without a reference? So when the guy threw out this claim 3, 4, maybe 5 times, he said, you can't deny that someone is our unless he did actually have two eyes. He said, therefore, this is from the Sunnah confirming that Allah has two eyes. So then I finally said to him, where'd you get this quote from? Or this reference? Where'd you get this from? He said, the scholar said it. Subhanallah wa bihamdi. See how somebody's going to try to get you there? The scholar said. So if you're not strong there, and you yourself, you're one of the people who say, the scholar said, you don't know who, then what are you going to do when someone says to you, the scholar said? So I told him, where? He said, in the Mu'jam. Al-Mu'jam al-Arabi. I said, which one? He said, Al-Mu'jam al-Arabi. That means Arabic dictionary. I said, which one? And it's like he paused for a second. And he said, Al-Qamus al-Muhit. Long story short here. So I looked in Al-Qamus al-Muhit. What's it saying there? It says, Awar is someone who lost the sense of one of his eyes. That's what's in Al-Qamus al-Muhit. The Awar is the one who lost the sense of one of his eyes. So I told him, you're a liar. It doesn't say that. It doesn't say what you said. And then he really tried to get out of there. He said, well, I'm talking to you now with the Kalam Nafsi. So he tried to change the subject to Kalam Nafsi. If you don't know what that is, don't worry about it now. And his buddies too in the conversation trying to interject, and they said, you want to swear that you didn't find it? No, I don't want to swear. I didn't come here to swear. It's not the purpose of the debates. He says, I will swear. I don't care. I don't want you to swear. It doesn't matter to me, swear or not. It's not in the book. All those distraction tactics. Wahhabis are liars. They are liars. So that's why here he's going to say, no, I saw plenty of quotes of the scholars who said they're Salafis. Either he's delusional, he thinks he saw something he never saw, or he's a liar. So the Sunni challenges him. Produce them then. Let's see what you saw. Show me. So the Wahhabi says, but we call ourselves the Salafis because we are calling back to the pure way of the Salaf. So what's that right there? That's avoiding the challenge. He didn't step up to the challenge here. Now here you want to take care of his feelings, then you don't have to press him. So the Sunni responds, this is a claim from the perspective of someone looking at the Muslims as deviants. You calling yourself Salafis because you're calling back to the pure way of the Salaf? Means you're saying, who left the pure way of the Salaf then? The Muslims left the pure way of the Salaf, so that you got to call back to it? Then it sounds like you're looking at the Muslims as deviants, which that's their case. They might not offer that to you though, unless you bring it out of them. And then, like happened to me in one conversation, when I told him, this is what you all believe, he said, and how could we not believe they're deviants when they are grave worshippers? So the Sunni says, this is a claim from the perspective of someone looking at the Muslims as deviants. But look from our perspective. Yani, try to not see it from your own perspective only. Maybe a Wahhabi is incapable of this. Muhammad ibn Abdul Wahhab comes 200 years ago, claiming to call the Muslims back to the belief. So that's confirmed. If you ask a Wahhabi, he won't deny it. Tell him, do you know that? That Muhammad bin Abdul Wahhab, he claimed to call the Muslims back to Aqidah and back to Iman and away from Shirk. You know that? This is his da'wah. So if he knows, he'll say, yeah, we know that. That's why he's the Imam. So you can't see the other perspective, yani, that this guy's the deviant one. So right here we follow up. So from where did he know it? How he got this if everybody around him is mushrik, mubtadir, innovator, heretic, pagan, grave worshipper, etc., etc. So who he took the truth from? Which sheikh was his that was his imam on the haqq amongst the imams of his time? So that he took that, he received that knowledge by proper religious education that's known, because you're not going to say he got revelation, are you? No, you're not going to say he got revelation. So, okay, so he didn't get revelation, and you don't know where he got these, what one might call radical ideas. So that means what? Does that mean he's the problem? Since he was not following the Muslims of his time, then either he was a prophet who got revelation and knew what no one else did. He's not going to accept that. And this is surely impossible, or else it is he who was the deviant. He said, is it a valid response to say that claiming that the Muslims are on shirk is claiming that the Muslims are in fact disbelievers? Well, it's a fact. That is a fact. So that fact, if you state it in the right place, then it will be appropriate. Now, if we investigate his statements here, he says, untrue, I've seen plenty of quotes of the scholars of old who say they are Salafis. Doesn't go there. But we call ourselves the Salafis because we are calling back to the pure way of the Salaf. It's not direct response to this statement in particular. So if he says something that warrants that response, then it will be appropriate. Yani, what you said there in your question, it could go inside this answer, but that's because this answer builds up to it. Don't just start there like that because it's not directly relevant to the statements. So I hope that's clear for you. Likewise, Al-Albani, he came within the last 50 years commenting on the grades of hadiths that have already been graded 1,000 years ago. If he's correct, if Al-Albani is correct in his grading, then the Muslims have been wrong for 1,000 years. And if that's the case, then he's not following the Salaf, he's correcting them. He's doing the job that they got wrong. And if he's wrong, then he is the mischievous one who's perverting the hadith science, and he's still not following the Salaf. So when you say something like that to a Wahhabi, you might still be taking his feelings into consideration, but they're very sensitive when you discredit their authorities. It's like insulting someone's mother. He's probably more offended than if you insulted his mother. If you insult Ibn Taymiyyah, he'll be more offended than if you insult Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. The reality is that the overwhelming majority never stopped being upon the pure creed of the Salaf. You are the ones who are saying otherwise. And the sound hadiths were known before Al-Albani ever appeared. Yes. And you could put two Y's there if we want. Al-Albani. Shadda. Yani, we're taking better care of transliterating his name than they do. The sound hadiths were known before Al-Albani ever appeared. And some of them say Sheikh Albani because they think he's Bani. So they say Albani, but it's Al-Albani. So Albani means Albania, from Albania, the Albanian. So he's Al-Albani. Even that's the ignorance, because it seems to me like most Wahhabis, at least maybe American ones, they just say Sheikh Albani only instead of Al-Albani. I think that's their ignorance, not loose tongue. And many Wahhabis, they say Sheikh Abdul Wahhab instead of Ibn Abdul Wahhab. He's the Ibn. His father, Sheikh Abdul Wahhab, was a good scholar. Also, that's their ignorance. They don't know their own Imam. Yes, the Muslims are now weak and sinful, but they are not deviants. They do not need to be called back to Tawheed because they never left it. They just need to learn. They don't know the details. They don't know how to talk about some issues, but doesn't mean they believe in shirk. They need to return to religious education and practice, not a belief system that was lost and needs to be reintroduced. That's the aqeedah of Wahhabi. How he believes that he's against bid'ah and doesn't see that claiming that he's reintroducing Tawheed is actually the disguise of his bid'ah. He disguised his bid'ah so well that he didn't recognize it. Like a person who hid something from himself. And then he really forgot. The nation has always been upon the truth and always will be. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, as narrated by Al-Bukhari, لا تزال طائفة من أمتي ظاهرين على الحق لا يضرهم من خالفهم حتى يأتي أمر الله. There does not cease to be a group from my nation that is obviously upon the truth. Those who oppose them will not harm them until comes the command of Allah, meaning until Judgment Day. Once I used this argument about Muhammad bin Abdul Wahhab The implication of Muhammad ibn Abdul Wahhab's da'wah being that he's a prophet. And someone who's not a Wahhabi didn't understand the argument. So he thought I was making bad argument. And that I was accusing Wahhabis of what they don't say. So they don't say Muhammad bin Abdul Wahhab is a prophet. And I didn't say they say that. But it's not a bad argument that their implication is that he is, because he grew up in Muslim society. So, he grew up in the middle of Arabia. So if all the people around him are deviants, then how did he know the truth? Who taught it to him? He just woke up and knew it one day, or what? So then the Wahhabi says, then who are those people who are upon the truth if it isn't the Salafis? Isn't this the same question he asked 2-3 times already? Yes. So that's just to show you how when the person is stuck, he can't get out of his own bubble, then that's how his mind's going to be unable to detach from something. So now we're repeating. They are called Ahlus Sunnah, or the Sunni Muslims. If you lose patience like I do sometimes, you'll say, I already told you. Or you might say, you're making me repeat myself. So I need to be more patient. But I will sometimes still tell you, you're making me repeat myself. Sometimes I feel like it's needed. Because I want you to think well, that's why. It's like, for example, you ask me a question. I'll tell you a rule. And then there's something I didn't say. Whatever's implied, I didn't say it. So then someone would ask, what about this? So it means, that thing, yeah. If I don't say it, the person's going to be confused. But also, if the answer is no, that means what I said doesn't make sense. So next time that happens, I'll show you. If you're not following me, what I mean right now. Well, let me keep going here. So the Wahhabi says, so you're basically saying the Salafis are deviants. So, and he should have known that from a long time ago. Or he already did. But he couldn't find a way to defend what he's doing and show that it's right. So the Sunni says to him, I have described for you who is the group that one should follow. And I gave you evidence for that from the religious documents and from the history. If it is clear for you that the group that calls themselves the Salafis don't fit that description, then you have understood within yourself whether they are deviants or not. And he's trying to just get me to come out and say it. I could come out and say it trying to take care of your feelings here. I'm still concerned you might be a delicate one. Also notice that here in the document there's some contractions like don't. That's informal. Contractions are informal. I usually avoid contractions when I write religious material. But here I put the contraction because it's fitting for the dialogue going back and forth, conversations, slightly informal. But I'll remind you here, I'll give you some tips too. Even though slightly informal here, I'll remind myself and you, when you have such conversations, avoid profanity, even if the other person uses profanity. People's professionalism has gone down the drain. It's like people don't know what professionalism is anymore. So avoid the profanity. And also don't be reluctant to speak intelligently and clearly. Like some people, they're ignorant. And they make fun of people who don't speak ignorantly like they do. If you spoke to them clearly and properly, for some people, that's silly. Don't worry about that. You just speak clearly and speak properly. But if speaking slang is beneficial, do it. But don't speak ignorantly, though. There's a difference between speaking in a slang language and having ignorant behavior. So the Wahhabi says here, why do you keep saying the group that calls themselves the Salafis? What do you call them? So that's 2 questions right there. Why do you keep saying the group that calls themselves the Salafis? What do you call them? So 2 things here. One is that when you talk to someone, they might ask you more than one question at a time. As you go back and forth, they might say to you more than one question at a time, but you Just say to a person one point at a time. Say something, start it and end it. Make sure it's strong. Have knowledge behind it so that if you need to back it up, you can back it up. But you don't have to back it up right away. Don't say, for example, this is a suggestion. Don't say such and such and such and such is the fact. And the evidence is, if it were me, I most likely would say such and such and such and such is the fact, period. Then I'll stop and then I'll see how he reacts. So if he asks me for the evidence, then I'll give him the evidence. If he agrees with me, then so be it. If he disagrees there, then I'll see what does he say. Try to keep your responses to a person brief and clear and brief. Yani, the more you talk, then what? The more you talk, the more you can weigh his mind down. And the more you talk, the more doors you can give him to jump around too. You don't want him jumping all around. You want to keep him contained. And like that, you keep yourself also focused. So here he has two questions. That's one thing that I gave you. Now, other thing is, I say, out of these two questions, only one of them is the very important question, which is the second one. What do you call them? As for the first question, why do you keep saying the group that calls themselves the Salafis? I say that's probably that he knows why I'm saying that. And the answer to why is because I don't believe they deserve the name. So that's probably clear to him. You said, if you state your argument and they disagree, can you ask for proof on why they disagree? If it were me, it depends on what I said to them. It depends on what I said to them. Because as a rule of thumb, I'm not going to ask him for his proof unless he makes a claim. Unless he asserts something, he makes some assertion, then I'll ask him for his proof. If I make a claim and then he says, I disagree, then I probably wouldn't say, what's your proof for why you disagree? I probably would continue to strengthen my own argument. Not to ask him to strengthen his argument. Because when you ask your opponent for a proof, why would you do that? It has to be to get you closer to winning, right? Winning here doesn't mean satisfying your ego, by the way. So say winning here, you need to be careful, be mindful. Because we don't want to be driven by ego here. If you're driven by ego here, you might miss your prayers because you're not going to stop arguing with this guy. You said, does disagreeing with a claim imply a claim being made by him? Yes, it does. It does imply that. And really, I was getting at that. That's why I'm saying, like, it is like if he says, I disagree, that's like he's making a claim. It is. But it's not very direct claim, though. Right? So for me, I might ask him what's his proof for his disagreement? Maybe, but as a rule of thumb, I'm usually going to ask him what's his proof for a clear assertion that he makes. As for if I said to him, the case is this, such and such, and then he says, I disagree, then probably, because depends on what's being said, really. That's going to really determine which way you're going to go. So I'm just estimating here. If he says, I disagree, then probably I'm going to work on strengthening my own argument here, not inviting him to strengthen his argument here. You said, isn't a rule in Munawara Rashidiyya al-Bayyinatu ala al-Mudda'i? Yes. It is a rule. Al-Bayyinatu ala al-Mudda'i. The burden of evidence is on who makes the claim. That's true. But And that's a very important rule too. But still is a chess piece though. It still is a chess piece. You might move your chess piece or you might not. You're going to move that chess piece when it is to your benefit or when you can estimate advancement. You're not going to move that chess piece just because there's an open square only. So I'm not going to swiftly, always, soon as he say anything, what's your proof, what's your proof, what's your proof? Especially you're dealing with Wahhabi. If he's tricky one and very dishonest one, disingenuous one, then you really want to say as little words as possible. Because he's going to cling to anything you say. And he's going to jump with you. He's going to jump and jump and jump. He's not going to stay focused unless he thinks that this is how he's going to beat you. That's when he is capable of staying focused. He's going to say, no, well, let's come back here. But when he doesn't see he can beat you there, he's going to jump with you. So anything you say, he's going to latch onto something. And then if you go there, then you're going to say something, then he's going to latch onto something there. Then if you go there, khalas, now you're all the way off of your first point. And then you're still going to argue with him for another 15 or 20 minutes. So here, this question, why do you keep saying the group that calls themselves the Salafis? For me, that's not the important question here out of two of his questions. Maybe, I'm going to read what I have here, but maybe in real life, I will skip this first question, maybe. What do you call them? Well, I call them the Wahhabis. We're going to see what we have written here. But the answer to why is because... And the answer to what do you call them is, I call them such and such. So that because, I might skip it, maybe. And because, he knows the answer, which is, the minimum answer here is because I don't agree that they deserve this name. And maybe the second question really is just what he means by the first question. Maybe he means he's just being more clear when he asked the second question. That's really what he wanted to get at. Why do you keep saying the group that calls themselves the Salafis? What do you call them? Maybe he doesn't see that, doesn't register really for him as two questions. So the Sunni answers him. The Muslims call them the Wahhabis. They are named after Muhammad ibn Abdul Wahhab al-Najdi. Now you know what someone might do here? Let's say he gave this answer. The Muslims call them the Wahhabis. You know what someone might do here? He might say, and the name Wahhabi is valid according to the rules of Sarf wa katha, and then he goes there on a rant there. That's in the wrong place. Don't say more than what you need to say. They are named after Muhammad ibn Abdul Wahhab al-Najdi. Wait for him to say to you, Wahhabi, that name is, the judgment of that is such and such. Then respond. He was deemed a heretic by his own father, Sheikh Abdul Wahhab, and his brother, Sheikh Sulaiman ibn Abdul Wahhab, and by his sheikhs. And he aided the British in fighting the Muslims. He claimed that the nation at large went astray. And became polytheistic grave worshippers. He revived the teachings of Ibn Taymiyyah, who died in jail and was charged also with heresy. So let's stop there. Do you have any question I can answer for you? This Wahhabi that I talked to recently, the one who was making the claim about Awar, when I finally asked him, what's your reference for that? Because he repeated it so many times. Awar, Awar, Awar. I paid attention to how he worded it, how he kept repeating it. So when he repeated it with the same wording again and again, what does that mean? That means that's a mahfuz indahu, mahfuzun. He memorized the wording. That means this is ibara mahfuzah. So if he memorized the wording, he should have a source for it. Now, if I found him always changing the words, then I might not ask him, what's your reference here? Because it's indication for me that he's paraphrasing. But when he keeps saying the same words over and over and over, that's indication for me he's not paraphrasing. So if he's not paraphrasing, then where did you get this ibara mahfuza from? Is it something you made it up? أنت ركبتها? You composed this and then made it a qaida. You made it some rule and you pass it off to the people like it's official. And that's why you keep repeating it verbatim. Or you really found it. So when he kept saying, our is not denied but from someone who has two eyes. And staying consistent in the ibara, in the phrasing. So I say, okay, this is mahfuz indahu. Then I say to myself, unlikely that he has a source for this. If he cannot produce for me a source that give this phrasing verbatim, as he insists on repeating it verbatim, then I'm going to stick him here. And so that's one that I was confident to say to him, all right, give me a reference for this one. I could have said that for several things, but I just held it because this one's sneaky and jumping all around. So I told him, give me your reference. Where'd you get this ibara? So he said, from the dictionaries. I said, which dictionary? He says, the Arabic. He said, min al-mu'jam. I said, which one? It means from the dictionary. He said, al-mu'jam al-arabi. The Arabic dictionary. So it sounds like it's a title. Because yani, I know better, that I know how sneaky they are. So that's why I pressed him more. So he's so sneaky that if I don't know better, I'm going to think he just gave me a title. Al-Mu'jam al-Arabi. And his friends even said, when I told him, which one? They said, he told you, Al-Mu'jam al-Arabi. So I said to him, which one? After that, after he keep repeating, Al-Mu'jam al-Arabi. Which one? Which one? So if it's really one called Al-Mu'jam al-Arabi, he's going to say, that's the name of the book, ya Rajul. Al-Mu'jam al-Arabi. But he didn't say that, even though he repeated, Al-Mu'jam al-Arabi, Al-Mu'jam al-Arabi. But because I insisted. So then he said, Al-Qamus al-Muhit. So that was here, I pulled the trick out from him. He wasn't able to stand on that trick, so he had to go further. He's calling my bluff here. He's hoping I don't know these things. That's what Wahhabi's going to do to you. That's why when that Wahhabi did what he did when I was young and confused me, and then I knew his tricks after that, when I went back to find out what's going on, I saw how he's so tricky. I said, A'udhu billah, like this? This how they go? Oh man, may Allah help me to destroy these people. So then he said, Al-Qamus al-Muhit. So then I looked in Al-Qamus al-Muhit. It doesn't say the ibara he said. So he said to me, I told him it's not there. He said, you swear? Shoot, do I swear? So that's he's playing games there. Well, we're not here to swear. I'm going to swear to you. Subhanallah. Tayyib.